Hey guys, thanks for joining us. Joe G here with Alliance Auto Care, nothing but G's. We have a little bit different style we're going to do on our discussion today. I'm joined here with Anthony Ficarra with Valhalla Solutions. He also runs the Financial Advisory podcast and YouTube channel. And the reason he's here with us today is we're going to discuss different tools in different ways to get into a G-Wagon and or luxury vehicle. You may already have some of these tools in play right now and you don't realize it, but he has a lot of very interesting insight and knowledge that has helped me get to the point where I am. And I wanted to bring him on the podcast to share his knowledge, and hopefully you guys can gain something from what he has to offer and enjoy. Anthony, give us the 10,000 foot view of what you do and why you do it.
Okay, so what I do. So I used to build power lines. So all these tattoos did not come when I was in financial services. People look at me sideways when I tell them what I do. But I used to build power lines, made a career change. And what I do now is financial services. Well, what is that? There's a few different things. One of them is life insurance. One of them is retirement planning. One of them is 401ks. But with the life insurance side of things, there's a lot of cool things you can do with it. I mostly started doing that because my previous career, people would die, right? So I thought, there's a need for that. That's helped these blue collar guys out with that. But once I was in there, I realized you can use life insurance as a tool. And what Joe's talking about here is using it as a tool to grow some cash value, use it, leverage it while you're alive. And then you can use it for whatever you want. And if you choose to use it to get into a luxury vehicle, that's what he's talking about.
Yep. Actually, it was really important for me. And this was an interesting thing that came to light not too long ago. And for background, Anthony's been actually one of our clients since 2018, 2019, that time frame. He came to us with a G-Wagon. So immediately he was okay. He was one of the good guys.
Yes.
He had a G63. It was lifted. It had all the right look and stance to it. And he's actually been religious about bringing not only his G-Wagon here, but we take care of his other vehicles as well. So it's always been a pleasure working with him in that capacity. But when I found out what he did as for a living, it became very interesting. Actually, I stumbled across his podcast, Financial Advisory Podcast, and I found it very, very interesting. I picked up the phone, I called him, and I said, hey, here's what I have. Would you mind taking a look at it and let me know if it's gaining traction, if it's moving in the right direction, or if there's something else I should be doing differently altogether? And that was where I found the true value of it is, not trying to toot your horn here, but you gave me a real no BS, honest look at the product I had. You let me know how it was performing, and you gave me option A and option B and option C, and it said, hey, here's some other things that you could look at that would perform differently. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so a lot of times when someone has a life insurance policy, it wasn't set up with the intention of what it could be set up for. So like when Joe had it, I think he got it just to get it, knew that it could do this to a degree. I looked at it and it was already, I think, was 4 years old, maybe 5 years old. I'm like, yeah, dude, it's going good, but we can make it better, right? So a lot of times you'll look at a policy, it's already been cooking for a few years. It's already got some cash value growth. It's hard to say, oh, well, this thing sucks, because it doesn't suck. But is it as efficient as it could be? And a lot of times, 10 times out of 10, I can beat it and make it go better. And a lot of the reasoning is it's the design from the beginning is typically going to be set up for you as a client or the agent. Unfortunately, this business is pretty dirty, just like mechanics, right? You don't know if you can trust your mechanic. Same concept, right? With that being said, agents typically will design the policy for commission, and then maybe make it okay for the client, unfortunately. So it's very easy for me to look at a policy that's already been in place and make it outperform by rolling it over, starting a new policy. Even if, like in Joe's case, it was 4 years later, which means he's 4 years older, it's still able to make it perform better. So,
yep. What was interesting to me, is it safe to say that it's an interesting mechanism that you can use for maintaining control of your capital?
Yes. Yeah, it's unique. It's the only thing out there like it. It grows tax-free. It grows independent of what the stock market is doing. Sometimes, so like you can have whole life that's completely outside the stock market, or you can have an IUL to where it is going to gain by the stock market, but it's not going to lose money like the stock market can. So it's always safe money. So It could be your nest egg. It can get bigger gains with an IUL, or it can be slow and steady with a whole life. Either way, it's very safe money. So it can be your nest egg, but instead of it just being like a savings account, it can actually grow for you better than a savings account would be.
Interesting. From my perspective as a business owner, still fairly young guy, but we're a couple years in on it now, and it's been growing nicely. The thing I really like about it, and I'm sure some people watching this will be like, huh, interesting, is it offers you an area to grab control of the money that you've invested into it. You can still maintain control of it, and you can pull it out and use it to get into a nice vehicle, pay off other things, do stuff for your house, whatever you need to do. I don't necessarily have to pay it all back.
Yeah, the cool thing is when you take that money out, if you were to light it on fire, it's going to still perform like you never touched it. That's the very, very unique thing. Unlike borrowing against your stock or borrowing from your house, if you don't pay it back, you lose those assets. With this, two things. One, you don't have to pay it back because it's going to come off of the death benefit at the end. And two, the money you borrow is not the money out of the account. It stays in there technically earning uninterrupted compounding interest forever. And because you're only borrowing against the cash value, that's why it's able to do that. And because you're borrowing from it, it's then therefore a loan and therefore tax-free. So it's always structured when you take the money out. It's always structured as a loan. And people get a little confused on that. Well, I'll have to pay it back. But no, it's structured that way to benefit you. So where it's a loan, therefore growing tax-free. It's a loan, therefore you're not taking the money out of the account. So it's there still compounding. So it's very unique in that aspect.
Interesting. So with this, just to clarify for everyone watching, we're talking about a whole life insurance policy or IUL.
Correct.
Not a term life insurance policy.
Correct. So the way I would structure a policy for somebody, it would probably be multiple policies, right? If you strictly want to make the cash value the most efficient way to do it, we're going to do it very low death benefit, high cash value. Okay. Therefore, we're not worried about the death benefit. Okay. We're going to build this policy to absorb as much cash, take as much cash in there, and grow compounding forever. Sometimes that creates a shortfall of a death benefit that you may need as a family. If you're the breadwinner, if you have some kids, if that's the case, we can do a term policy. Okay. Or we can do all of it under one policy. It doesn't really matter. But for some people who are like, I don't have any kids, I don't care about that, I'm just looking for the cash value. That's how you could structure it, would be low death benefit, high cash value.
Is that something that could be useful from a business owner's perspective? They've some excess cash at the end of the year that they need to offset for tax purposes. Yes. Is that a good way to do it?
Yes. And then also think of it if you have a partner. Okay. Let's say you have a 50-50 partner and one of the partners passes away. One of the things you can do is have a policy on each other as partners. A lot of times a bank will require you to do it anyway. It's called a key man policy. If you pass away, your share of the company is going to go to the heir, right? Typically the wife. Well, did you get in business with your partner or with the wife? Probably the partner. And now all of a sudden you're in business with the wife. That's not usually going to make for good dynamic. So what you do is you insure your partner that policy will pay out and buy him out. So now you have just bought out your partner. Now, again, death is tricky. I'm not trying to pass over the emotional impact of that, but looking at just strictly financially, you now have a pretty much an inexpensive way to buy out your partner versus having to buy him out or his family out with equity from the business.
I see.
Right? So if you had a business partner 50-50 and you have to buy him out for $1 million, well, the policy pays that off. He's taxed or he's paid out. But if you didn't have that, now you have to take $1 million from your business to refinance it or borrow from your business to pay out half, or you're stuck in business with the new partner. And that could be good or bad.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so it's a good way to offset some cash at the end of the year.
Yep.
Good way to buy a potential partner if you ever had to. Mm-hmm. Interesting. And that's with a whole life or IUL, not term, obviously.
Okay. Think of term as like renting a policy or like car insurance or like renting a house. For a term policy, you're renting a house for 20 years. And when you move out, you have nothing to show for it, right? Equity stays with the homeowner. You just had a nice cheap place to live for 20 years. That's okay. That checks a certain box. Whole life for IUL is like owning a house. After 20 years, a house may not be paid off, but you have a lot of equity in that home. You have equity in your policy. And then just like you don't have to sell your house to access the equity, you don't have to die to access the equity in your home or in your policy. similar concept.
Interesting. Okay. Now, getting back to what our channel is about, Nothing But G's.
Yes.
We play with toys. So we're all about fun trucks, having fun, all that good stuff. So if we're at a point in our life, let's say we have a policy that's been cranking along for the last 5-10 years, and it's not necessarily initiated by you, but another party. But for all intents and purposes, we have a whole life insurance policy. We'll call it your $1 million policy for round number's sake.
Yep.
And is that something that we could take a look at if we find ourselves wanting to get into a G-Wagon or something that, is approaching that 6-figure mark? We're like, gosh, how do I get into this without tying up all my capital or dipping into my war chest? I mean, is that a mechanism that...
You could do that. You could do that for one of two things. You could either buy the vehicle outright, and then you could pay yourself back, right? Because you can take, instead of paying the bank back, you just pay yourself back and pay your policy back.
You're talking by taking money out of the policy. Yeah, borrowing against the policy to buy the vehicle, and then you pay the policy back.
Let's say it's $100,000, right? And the truck costs $100,000. You could borrow the $100,000 from your policy, pay off the vehicle outright. You own the vehicle, and then instead of making the payment back to the bank like you otherwise would, you make that same amount of payment back to yourself. And by doing that, not only are you not paying interest to the bank, your policy is still growing like you never touched it. So the net cash positive on that is very substantial, because from paying the bank the 5 or 10% interest, whatever you would pay, you're now paying yourself back with no interest, and the policy is still growing like you never touched it. So the net gain there is substantial. Or you could say, let's say you have to make a large down payment because sometimes you can't go to the bank and get all of that, no payment down or no money down. Let's say you want to put 20% down or 10% down on the vehicle. You could borrow that from your policy versus borrowing or taking it from your savings account or other cash, wherever else we have cash.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I really like that. From a business owner perspective, it makes a lot of sense. It's really appealing. At the end of the day, we only have so much capital to play with. And that capital is running the business, taxes, employees, mortgage, all that.
Opportunity.
Exactly. Opportunity. You need to be able to grow and pivot as you need to. So tying up that amount of capital at one shot is not necessarily appealing.
If you do it the right way, you can take that policy and turn it into your slush fund or your overall cash pile. All of your operating costs could and should go into your policy because you can access it like a savings account. Okay, it's not overnight like an ATM machine or going to the bank. It's about 24 to 48 hour process to say, I want to borrow from my policy. Cool. Check some boxes and they wire the money to you. So it's a little bit more than going to the bank, right? But we're talking by hours or a couple of days. Sure. So it's still as liquid. I would call it as liquid. But that money, every time you put money in your policy, it never actually leaves your policy. When you borrow out, you're just borrowing against the value. So instead of you actually taking the money out, you've now grown your policy by depositing. And when you take the money out, you're just borrowing against the cash value. It's still there and it's still growing. So if you constantly do it that way, you're always building this nest egg. The compounding interest is always going off of that new account value. And then you borrow out just a small amount and you're always going to be net positive than if you didn't do it.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes. It gets super nerdy. I mean, we can go really, it depends on how deep you want to go on it, how far on the spectrum we want to go here, but like it can go really nerdy. It's also fun. I also one of my abilities is to dumb it down like a caveman. Yeah. Right? Because my clients they're cavemen like I am, right? And that's how I make sure they understand it.
Yeah, we got to keep it simple, man. I'm ex-military, silly with a bunch of Marines and silly crayons, so they got to be able to understand.
I do very well with crayon eaters, no problem. I speak fluent crayon, fluent caveman. I'm pretty good at that.
Well, it helps that you've got the blue collar background. Yeah, we've all been a grunt at some point in time. We all had to work for it. I think the big change is when we finally get to the point in our life where we're no longer the grunt, but we're still working very, very hard for what we're doing. How do we be smart about this so that we can continue to grow our asset while having fun and doing what we love to do?
I want to say too, a lot of people that don't understand this, they're going to shit on this. They're not going to understand it completely. They're going to say, oh, this is bad. It's XYZ, right? Dave Ramsey does not like whole life. And you're going to have certain members of the community that don't understand it. And therefore they're going to, oh, it's a scam or it's this or that. It's not true. It can be. You can go to your local mechanic and get ripped off. You can go anywhere and get ripped off. These policies are no different. You can get one poorly designed. I would say if you already have one, it's a good chance it's either poorly designed or not as efficient as it could be, but it doesn't mean you can't make it the right way. So that's what I really specialize in, is making sure they're set the right way.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So not to take a whole lot of time here, but in summary, what are 2 or 3 major things that someone should look at if they do have a policy and they're thinking about pulling cash out of it? What are 2 or 3 major things that they should consider before doing it?
If it's an IUL and it wasn't structured properly, pulling cash out can cause it to lapse, which is kind of scary. So if it wasn't designed for cash value growth, and maybe it's a level death benefit and it's not growing the death benefit, and you pull a bunch of cash out, you could be could have a little concern there. If it's a whole life policy and you're pulling money out, just make sure that the death benefit is still large enough for the death for your family members if you have to pull some out. So depending on how it was designed, pulling cash out can kind of cause it to be less than ideal. But if it's designed properly and that's what you are intending for, then you're in good shape.
Interesting. So it sounds like before you do that, understand what the ratio is and how much you can pull out.
Exactly. How much you should be able to pull out without it causing any issues. Make sure you understand that by pulling cash out, you may reduce the death benefit. And as long as you are aware of that, and it's still enough death benefit behind, there's a lot of things to double check there. Yeah.
Interesting. Good to know. Okay. Well, where could we find you online?
Okay, so I've got a website. Well, the easiest way is Instagram. I think Instagram is the most genuine version of me. Fun stuff I post and business stuff. Anthony_Ficarra_. You guys probably tag me in that.
Yep. We'll put I have a link.
For whatever reason, my own name, I end up butchering. People are like, is that Ficarra? No, it's Ficarra, but whatever. I can't say my own name. So anyhow, that's a good one. My podcast is the Financial Advisory Podcast. And then I have a website, bahala-solutions.com. That's got some cool testimonials, some links, and some other stuff that I do. So
okay, cool. Yeah. We'll put a link to all that stuff up here so you guys can check it out. Yeah. Like I said, I've known Anthony since 2018-19. He's been coming to our shop, and recently, last couple of years, we got together and started working on a professional level back and forth with my financial stuff. And again, the reason I brought him on this this platform is I thought the information was valuable. Every time I sit with him and we discuss things, I always have an aha moment. And from a business owner or for someone that's got a little bit of capital and you just want to protect your assets and have room to play or move or pivot or whatever you got to do, it's important to look at all the pieces on the playing board before you make a decision. And he's really helped me navigate that and get through it. So he's a wealth of information. I fully encourage anybody who has any questions to reach out to him. The other thing is he's always happy to answer questions. There's never anything tied to it. So he's just a great wealth of information. I've always appreciated that about him. So I'm Joe G, Alliance Auto Care, nothing but G's. Thanks for watching. Anthony Ficarra, Bahala Solutions. Thanks again. Chat soon.
Thank you.